Hello there, Facebook. It's Sanjana here from Feelgood Treatments. For those of you who don't know me very well, my name's Sanjana. I own Feelgood Treatments, and I'm a holistic therapist helping people with anxiety to transform that into living more joyfully. And I work with teenagers and adults using a combination of coaching and holistic therapies to help them find their way into happiness. So today is the first of a set of videos that I'm going to be doing on this page live once a week, and it's called the A to Z of anxiety, and it's really about exploring the idea of what is anxiety and how you can help yourself. And there'll be little tips and ideas that I've been using with my clients that have worked really well, and they have put them into practice and seen the benefit of them. So today I have my notebook here. I don't know if you can see full of notes just so I remember everything. So today I'm going to talk about anxiety, A for anxiety. So 1 in 6 adults in the UK have anxiety, and they have been to see a doctor or they've been to see another type of medical professional to get some help. And in a lot of ways, anxiety has been stigmatized as a bad thing, where in fact it's actually quite a normal response in the body. It's the response to a stressful situation. And when we lived in caves, the sort of stressful situation we would have faced was, someone like a saber-toothed tiger or a mammoth trying to kill us or eat us. And so it was the fight or flight syndrome. So your adrenal glands start pumping adrenaline, your cortisol starts flowing, and you're getting ready to decide whether to run away or not. Anxiety, as we perceive it today as a problem, is when we feel anxious about situations that don't present as dangerous. So a social situation is generally not a dangerous place for most people, and so we feel anxious about that, and people do experience social anxiety and they will cancel going out because it just feels so threatening to them. So that's the difference. So having anxiety where someone's trying to kill you, really normal. Or if you're having a long-term stressful situation at work, feeling anxious, is understandable. But when you have anxiety and it's in a place where there is no danger, there is no stress, but you're just feeling super stressed and anxious, that's when you know the anxiety is turning into a problem. So some of the symptoms that you can get when you experience anxiety include racing hearts, the butterflies in the stomach, breathlessness combined with a tight chest, so it really feels hard to take a good breath in or out. You might have a dry mouth. Some people experience nausea, sweating, they'll have pins and needles, they'll feel a sense of panic as well. And mentally, those are the physical symptoms, and then mentally they'll notice things like they think the same thoughts over and over again. They mentally overthink every situation. They might feel detached when it's not really appropriate to be detached as well. And then, of course, there is things like obsessive habits and avoidance. So where you avoid going to see people, you might avoid a situation that you perceive as very stressful, even if it is really not, and you'll avoid going to it. So what causes stress? Well, so as a holistic therapist, I'm looking at stress and anxiety as not just as a mental thing or a reaction to a mental situation. I'm looking at it as in terms of what's going on with your body, what's going on with your mind, and what's going on emotionally. So when I work with my clients, I have noticed that there is a pattern that appears for people who develop anxiety. And just to say that anxiety can actually flow through pretty much every situation in life to do with your health. You can be anxious with a cold or flu, and you can be anxious if you get a more serious diagnosis with, say, cancer or Parkinson's or motor neurone disease, etc. But anxiety threads through everything. All right. Anxiety can appear in relationships. It can appear at home with your children. I've got a 16-year-old currently doing his GCSEs, and we're having to manage our anxiety about his lack of revision, for example, or whether he's revising enough. Anxiety can also appear at work when you have team members perhaps who are not pulling their weight, and you can feel anxious about how is that going to affect you at work. So anxiety can affect you in many, many ways. And so when I'm working with clients, one of the things I've noticed is that there is almost always a trigger event. Now, a trigger event is something like an event where something shocking has happened, and it may not be shocking to other people, but to you it has been. So examples of big shocking events are divorce, a bereavement of some sort, and that includes your pets, because for some people their pets are their children, and so the passing of a pet can be a really bad thing. It can also be things like a redundancy, because redundancy can lead to you feeling like you've lost some of your identity. Who am I without this job? And that can create anxiety. Other smaller versions of traumatic events could be you've had a fall and that's traumatized you. And sometimes it can take up to 18 months for the effects of that traumatic event to appear. And that's when you start to see the symptoms of the restless sleep, or not getting enough good quality sleep, or the racing heart, etc., appearing, because your subconscious is still trying to process that traumatic event, and it's feeling overwhelmed and scared, and it keeps replaying it. So you need to just moving, someone's message popped up, just moving that off the screen. So there's always a traumatic event for some people, and so you just need to become aware of that. And as soon as you become aware of that traumatic event, you can then start seeing how the physical symptoms, the mental symptoms, and the emotional symptoms are turning up. So the other thing I just wanted to talk about was genetic predisposition. So in some families you have a predisposition, say, towards cancers. In others it could be, say, towards diabetes. And in some families it can be to things like depression and cancer. In holistic therapy, as a holistic therapist, I believe that you can have a genetic disposition, or predisposition rather, but you need to have the trigger to be the proverbial straw that breaks the camel's back, if you know that saying. So you need a trigger to kind of stimulate the predisposition. So that's something I want you to bear in mind. So just because you have a genetic predisposition doesn't mean you're going to develop anxiety and stress. And then the last thing that can also be an interesting factor with anxiety is inherited behaviours and beliefs. So if you look in your family and you have someone who is prone to being anxious, look at how their children behave, or how their siblings behaved, and find out how their mother was. Was she an anxious person, or was their father an anxious person? Are their siblings anxious as well? Are their children anxious? Because we learn by watching people who model behaviours to us. So we learn by seeing people who are resilient and how they problem solve and how they can get really creative. But we also learn that for some people being anxious is a way of coping and it works for them. So you have to look at what's going on around you within your environment as well. So how do you know if you are just a worrier or if you are just panicking? I say just, I don't mean it just, but if you're panicking or if you actually have anxiety. So I have created a quiz based on the quiz that the NHS use called the GAD-7, as well as combining comments from my clients where they have asked me questions and made comments, and I've combined that with the GAD-7 to create an anxiety quiz. It's got a few questions on it, and at the end of it, it will tell you whether you have low, medium or high anxiety, and in return for completing the quiz you will receive, and even if I say this myself, my very fabulous ebook called From Anxiety to Ease Within 30 Days, and it's full of the reasons. It explains why you might be anxious. It's full of top tips, including recipe plans for batch cooking and things like that, that will help you to move from an anxious state to an easy state. So I'll put the link for the quiz below this video, and please by all means take the quiz. I'd love to get your feedback on it, and if you have any questions you can also DM me or put a comment below and I will be sure to reply. Just to say also, if you subscribe to my newsletter already, we're having a bit of a problem with our CRM. So if you take the quiz and you're subscribed to the newsletter already, can you just message me and I will have to email the ebook to you directly, because there's a problem with the CRM and I have to fix that yet. And as with many things to do with admin, I'm not very keen on it. So that's my A for anxiety for this week. My top tips for you are: look at who's in your environment and how they act. Look at what symptoms you have. Start making a note of the symptoms and consider if you've had a traumatic event in the last couple of years. And if you're not sure if you have, just drop me a message. I'm really happy to have a chat with you and see if we can spot that for you. Next week will be B for boundaries, which is something that a lot of people struggle with. I will be posting in another event as well, so I'll let you know the time and date in the next couple of days. Wishing you all a lovely evening. I hope you found this helpful, and I will see you soon. Take care now. Bye.